global species value nature. I'm about to proceed with the singing of the national anthem. Before this, it is our obligation. It's my obligation to say that is not to imply that I go along with you all, agreeing to pretend that we won the American Revolution, that we have fulfilled our obligations. The most simple ones by fact-achieving nature, by sequence nature true, by free speech true. I'm going to show you how this is. This is using natures of confessions to people that don't realize this is a secret. This is a child abuse role that has everyone rolls with it. A negative value nature progression dissemination times. This is what I want to say. This is what I want to say before this. For every modern nation is the victim of what modern nations were built. You can't defend your fact-achieving nature role and describe it at the same time. Short of that, you're shown to discern needs to hide life progressions, needs to rightfully fear what the breaching organized crime with physical slavery, with the torture of our founders, with the fact-achieving nature slavery of our founders. That's self-value because we have child abuse branches. How is maintained per uses of the identity of the grounds value. Every identity has A on the left side of it, has W on the right side of it. Not actually, but as a science to discern our nature's nature of relationship to itself. The identity that has it so that we have to all need clean water. Has that any invention is going to be positive or negative in work or not in relationship to its identity, visible but so discernible. That and where and how everything all connects to itself. That which is self-generating, which bonded planets. Earth's the value manifest of overall one identity of value progression generated everything. And that one identity stays inseparable from all parts of itself. So Earth has this one unique nature of volume relationship to the rest of space, which is the rest of its relationship to its complete identity, which note that and how our identity is bigger than our physical bodies, was already here before them, while it is being them. So it's not even debatable. There is a range also that with that and how we are forever nature. For example, to discern it using science, you have to understand how the identity you were as a baby was a forever nature that is gone, but it's still here. And it's more than that. But this is a quality of fact-achieving nature that we have a free speech prohibited. And we have offensive database crime roles with what originally and still juxtaposed overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and all victim predator branches of modern nations there and here. And then how grouped that way, forced not to speak about that as suits and ties nations, natures of shared policing grouped specifically to have that top value exploiting the identity of the ground's relationship to how we are really, why we are really grouped, which is a value nature relationship to the value progression perfect that causes positive value nature or progressions or negative ones. See, this made modern nations self-value identities, blaming and having blamed the real causes of the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, blame the other things, others, and selves. Acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidiousness natures, wrongdoers, wrongdoing, mass wrongdoing. I'm not a lawyer now, please for not criminal. Oh, say. So this is what I wanted to show. The bombs coming, like you see pictures of things from space. Look at the pictures where you see the ground, how small it is. This is an identity that even a semi-nature of itself is the one that contains all individual, grouped, and all together at once, all identities of value progression. All the planets in space are contained by one identity, the identity of relationship to itself, and how it's self-generating so we can see this. Because it is so simultaneously, distinctly, and non-distinctly onto three natures of volume that are bonded, filling with this fill. As a game, it does not leak. We are a nature of volume. In other words, all natures of volume are a nature of volume of the nature of volume. This is why we all need to have clean water. This is why we all need the right mixture of air. We have Earth simultaneously distinct and non-distinct relationship to the rest of space, as where the individual nature has the leverage when with the rest of nature, with no criminal foreign influences. See, we're a value nature system that is a negative value identity of negative value nature progression, length of high D's, reaction. That's force-based nature, self-value going into space. Look here. We have what was used for the torture of our founders, crazy slavery of our founders recorded. Wood needs to argue that has criminal foreign influences and has physical delusions formally. We have systemic, especially mental health care corruption. We have systemically liars there tied to the interbranches. This is what's keeping each identity of the law as a victim predator, though. This is what forgiveness is about. If you want to make change, that's not just change. In other words, you have to use this core, the identity that has every invention not only work or not in relationship to itself, has a further positive or not. In other words, there are means. We don't have to strip mountains for the rest of the resources. If we're working as a species, knowing we're coming out of this tactically denatured relationship to nature together, and to afford it, we can't afford it through private and stuff like that. This is better than a holiday. This is where we consolidate too. We have this science together for these are value nature system progression. Everyone invested as fact with what is agreed upon, but that's not agreed upon right by them. And with those agreements were recorded, criminal foreign influences, physical delusions, can't defend themselves, and stand free speech. And this is being offensively. There's only 6 years in a grammar school. In the 6 years, they have a method recorded through time, having the interbranch family members and their relationships. And these are on and off CCSU intercities, on and off campuses, military, foreign, and domestic, tied to Washington, D.C., Trade Center. They make people make confessions, you don't even know them. So these are how they're exploiting boys and girls distinctly, non-distinctly, sickly, undiscerned both ways, even though overt and unrealized. Because we have victim predators originally still lying about all the identities of the ground, lying about the identity of morality, lying about the identity of sequence, lying about the value of the tactically denatured relationship to nature, force be the only pathology of infrastructure fathomable by anyone. This is the organized crime that American history is really about. We don't have to be lawyers to teach this also, because it's recorded through time how they use lawyers as victim predators originally stuff to treat types of the law and to ignore where and how originally and still. This is an organized crime method that juxtaposed a whole bunch of people as standing criminal and seditious natures with all kinds of natures of motivations, natures, needs, interests, to pretend they're about positive integrity together as fake sides of correlation nature, originally still, as sequence shifting cover-up natures, as identity theft racket natures, and tied to databases. This is using all the online platforms as victims, and then using it as breaching screens and tools, as sensibilities juxtaposed with natures of organized crime reported tied to our directors as victim predators. See, but they need to. We don't have. They can't defend themselves and their take and their value, having value, misprising criminality database crime rules, wire crime rules, uses of the ground criminal. The ground's value has a value tied to our quality of fact, cheap nature as the nature of violence. Only the extent of it is debatable. But with lies and criminal, and physical delusions, self-value, we have that offensive into science. It's not by accident. So we have, for example, regarding what it means, the worth to have a job, to have money to be able to pay for a lawyer, stuff like that. These are rackets where people doing that too are also need to hide, that valuing sustained positions where people are most exploited, like where they're homeless, especially, like where there are needs for, the great parts of the triage relationships. These places also are with doctors involved with all the natures of crimes through time, with that kept the states and areas, police forms, foreign and domestic, group nations, overt criminal enterprise, and private ones tied together, maintain needing to hide the same life progressions, needing to keep each nature of sophistication of awareness hurt distinctly and non-distinctly, and or helped into roles as valuing the identity of negative value nature progression that causes the real causes, that values the real causes and maintains the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts of nature, blamed on other things, others themselves, which is important. So, for example, then they throw up terms like criminal justice reform, things like that, with physical delusions, where that's part of the problem. With those physical delusions are intersciences and they're juxtaposed with criminal foreign influences, also maintained intersciences on and off campuses through time. I just remind. On and off CCSU, a whole bunch of people associated with Washington, D.C. and Trade Center attack, and a Trade Center are still then and now in investigations of that. Crimes with child offenders, even to hide their personal life regressions, because they were motivated to roles with this, exploiting how we have nations valuing how they're juxtaposed with overt criminal enterprises, how they're juxtaposed with private ones that originally still valued. These are crime rules as victims, but as victim predators with their quality of fact sheet nature, with what is recorded consciously, methodically, effectively maintain breaching organized crime method torture of Hartford, Connecticut, for example, of New York City. Specifically, again, in and as a method that knew since ancient times it was going to keep everyone only capable of blaming the real causes of this and of negative value nature progressions, acts of natures, blaming out other things, others themselves. See Santos L's way. No, positive. See, logic has needs by and has a nature of five bonded natures of sequence nature of leverage that are simultaneously distinctly and non-distinctly delicate and strong. But without sequence true, that is with all things to demonstrate what is even smaller than small and bigger than big. And this is, for example, also in demonstration of what is instantaneous. So you can just know things instantaneously. Not by it's because our nature has its own nature. It just knows. It just knows. Correlation. This is correlation. Correlation's identity of value, which is a value progression perfect. Our value is gaining as positive or negative, but in relationship to another course. See, but this is also an organized crime method that keeps knowing how to keep each quality of each age's needs to and abilities to correlate, to protract correlation nature simultaneously inherent active and progressive means and with sequence true and with identity true. See, this is making kids in each age simultaneously sickly, distinctly, and non-distinctly, and simultaneously breaching method maintain self-value with the branches originally still lie progressions to each spot. That's critical, like each age of fact-keeping nature of volume stewardships individually grouped in together with each age of campus. So we have 1 through 6. So they have the distinctions. Those are all exceptions are all exploited fact-keeping nature-wise. By this again is exploiting how there are types of law, and there are types of lawyers who are trained to justify and defend that, but there was never originally instilled, they were never free what exploits that, because this is a method that juxtaposes strangers. Now here where they play fact cheating nature record, like Chris Walters is a stranger who recorded, confessed, and demonstrated that he was involved with judges through time that are associated with people on Church Street and with the Old Town Cafe and with Charlie Bowes and a whole bunch of people in my area. I never saw him in the same place with. These are people that were involved with a Judge Smith. I had to write a complaint against. See, but those same courts were criminally involved with, and that person is criminally involved with a whole bunch of people, of federal criminals associated with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. This is through administrations. They have climax roles. They hide this from presidents, regardless, and especially if they're looking real close. They're missing this because then with the mobile gas station there. Before I went to work there, I went to work there to understand this because I had confessions about that with military police and with people associated with the database crime. When I was in middle school, made confessions about it, about the judges and things like that. This was tied to someone who made confessions about Congress and about police forms with corruption with the overt criminal enterprises when I was in grammar school. And so and about their roles with this interbranch. So I was having the value of this, the means to this, to discern things like in relationship to the organized crime that use color, overt. And these are people that are offensively pretending other people are liars through time. And then when they're older, they capitalize on that by pretending they had conversations in the past that never were. These are identity theft rackets. These are people that are no, they're not supposed to be. The reason they're supposed to be done, even allegations, they're using that as a crime tool because they're lying about their evidence reception, the sequence relationships to it. WFSB's recorded sequence shifting, attaching little kids to fake relationships to others, spreading lies with overt criminal enterprises. Now, with adults who were involved with that, I never saw them with people. In other words, there's a Lance Cuddy. I never had a conversation with him or his brothers in my life. They're recorded and confessed involved with a whole bunch of people with forensics and with database crimes, with identity theft crime acts, shared names crime roles, with a whole bunch of women interstates with the name Alicia, and a whole bunch of women and men with the name Bobby. They share that. These are foreign and domestic, how they keep them criminally foreign influenced. They keep naive reactions at the Trade Center agreement level. They keep naive reactions, for example, where we have to overcome the escalations with bombs and things like that. You see the bombs that I did. You see, like sometimes on YouTube, you see the latest bomb here. They put so much energy in going to space, but we're still in the pathology, even in Russia, the same pathology, criminally foreign influence with the fact-cheating nature of slavery and torture of our founders' roles. Specifically, you're going to do it. What they say when you're in this game, everyone and everyone's going to, what they're going to do, they're going to sustain, they're going to want to relax, and that's what they do. They invested everyone to do that, and then to exploit them from the life progressions further from those places, from those database relationships. So forgiveness is to realize that we have not had legal representation. Everyone's been child abuse victims for all formal suits and ties nation. They don't know how to deal with about how can they can't even. So for example, I want you to see how small, everyone needs to see how small we can see if we're working together. We're a nature of relationship to fact should be nature values that changes the variables of everything. We could agree to give relief to each other. Nations that are sickly distinct, all modern nations are sickly distinctly hurt by the same thing we don't counter because everyone's blaming out other things, others themselves, and self-valuing that only having been realized. Everyone's defenses of identities with this that are of value treatment, that of relationship to the ground treatment. It's only going to cause negative value because you're not going to help anyone. That's why you see even the wealthiest homes, they put a pond, not deep, shallow, little fountain. We have the pathology force with our founders didn't have free speech. I just want to teach. So I have to do another video for the thing.